Hello, everyone. I come to you today with a question. And more or less, not quite a question, but let's say a concept. Something that's been rattling in the back of my mind for a long time now, and I'm just kind of curious why it hasn't happened yet. And if you've read the title of the video, well, one, if you haven't read the title of the video, thank you for clicking on my content blindly and just trusting me. But if you've read the title of the video, you kind of know what I'm going for. Where is Nemesis Megatron? And I ask because concepts that go, concepts in Transformers in general, usually happen on both sides of the battlefield. If the Decepticons get combiners and triple changers, eventually the Autobots are going to get them too. And that became true of everything. Headmasters, Target Masters, Power Masters, Action Masters, Micromasters, all your masters. Everything except a few small things here and there. But very few of those exceptions exist. Even the Matrix of Leadership has different versions in various different fictions. You've got Dead Matrix, you've got the Unicron Matrix from the Machinima series. There are very few concepts that only exist on one side, but the Nemesis concept is one of those. The idea of twisting the leader of the factions. And granted, it's a more interesting concept to turn Optimus Prime evil, so I get it. This concept basically starts with Black Convoy in Car Robots in 2000. That said, there are Black Optimus Prime repaints that predate that, but none that were labeled Decepticons. It was a black repaint of God Jinrai done up as a, like a super, but that was still an Autobot. Things like that. But the first time it was done as specifically this is a clone of Optimus Prime who is evil was in Car Robots, and that is, of course, R.I.D. Scourge, who we're all very familiar with, and we love the designs, unless you're a designer at Hasbro, in which case you just did whatever you want. Yes, I'm still salty over that release that will never end. Point being, this particular design is something of an icon these days. Scourge was admittedly a name dump in 2001. To do it again, because of course they wanted to keep doing these black Optimus Prime repaints. They always sold well, so why not? They needed to come up with its own identity and name. You can't just reuse the G1 character forever. We've had issues with that in previous years. So we need a new name. So as a twist on the Black Convoy name, we come up with this twisted version of the Optimus Prime name, and that's where Nemesis Prime comes from. Alright, fair enough. And that's pretty much what we've known just about every Decepticon Black repaint Optimus Prime since. Unless it happens to be done based on the G2 laser design, in which case, yeah, we can give Scourge a quick shake out and just kind of ignore the fact that it's the same name as the flying bathtub transformer from G1. That said, what are we looking for in a Nemesis Megatron? Well, for starters, we have a concept that is somewhat close to what Nemesis does, but rather than like a twisted version of Megatron, it is like a worse version of Megatron, and that is Megatron X. It is a concept we first saw in the Transmetal video game for Beast Wars for the N64 and PlayStation. Megatron X was the final boss, and it was designed to be a threat to both a threat to both Maximal and Predacon in that game. So no matter who you played as and progressed through the tournament as, you had to fight Megatron X at the end. Bigger, badder, meaner, more evil. Even Megatron would see this one as a threat that has to be neutralized. Alright, fair enough. We saw this concept again in Cyberverse, which, yeah, he basically acted as the final boss of the entire series. And this was where we really got to see the concept of a Megatron X fleshed out. Way more powerful, way more cruel and evil. After eliminating Optimus Prime in his timeline, he basically just goes off the deep end, losing that counterpoint to him basically sends Megatron off the rails, and he becomes way worse. Way worse. And being equipped with a Matrix for a power source, that definitely ups the ante too. This is kind of what a Nemesis concept would be, but we're not really looking for just that. That's the most literal version, right? Of just like a Megatron that's just twisted to be more evil, the same way this Optimus clone is twisted to be evil. But it's the same concept done on the Decepticon side, then it should actually be turning Megatron good, right? So we have seen that one before too. In IDW, we saw a Megatron that flipped into an Autobot because of his own past and learning of just how far he's become, how corrupted he has become. And I know a lot of people have an issue with IDW's writing and the concept of an Autobot Megatron. I did a whole video about this, and I genuinely find it to be a far more compelling and complex version of Megatron than we had ever seen before. And I like the twist. For a lot of people who just see Megatron as the mustache-twirling villains making super weapons every week, yeah, okay, this is going to seem like blasphemy. But if you follow the character and the reasoning and the origin behind that Megatron and follow it through to what he had become, and then this realization of what he was originally, it makes sense. And it makes him so much more in-depth than just, I want to rule everything, that Saturday morning cartoon narrative. He deserves to be more complex at this point. It's been a long time. Let's let Megatron do something a little bit more compelling and a little bit more in-depth. So, we've seen good Megatrons before. And we've seen it in the past too. The Netflix, the Machinima Megatron, for instance, also ended up on the good side. So it's possible. But it's still not quite exactly what we're looking for here. We are looking for some kind of duplication that turns good. And basically, literally, the Nemesis Prime, but in reverse. So, what kind of character would it be, and how are we going to make it? Would you believe the character already exists? The character to be done up as a Nemesis Megatron is already in fiction and is one of the most underutilized characters in Transformers, and it is again a concept that only the Decepticon side has done, the Autobots have never done. So in a way, it works out perfectly. Welcome to a backdoor pilot of mine. I want to start doing videos based on Transformer characters that are very underutilized in fiction and what I would do with them in order to make them modern and more interesting. So this is my take on this, and we've kind of discussed the character on this channel before, but I'm going to go a little bit more in depth with him this time. We're going to be talking about Megaplex. Megaplex, for those who don't know, is a Machine Wars character and retroactively a G1 character it was thought to be a clone of Megatron. That was the concept, that it was a body double, similar to what is done by World Leaders and Doctor Doom. You put out the body double to be the public figure and wave to the crowd, or in Doctor Doom's case, lead the charge. But of course, you are safe sitting on your throne in Latveria. Nothing's going to happen to you should, an assassin or an X-Man pop up and start blasting you. So, Megatron, of course, has the same thing. Now, in reality, it's just Machine Wars needed to flesh out the number of toys it had, so they just took the Megatron mold, repainted it, and basically just like flipped inverted the colors. Megaplex has the blue helmet and the gray body. Megatron has the gray helmet and the blue body. Weird how it works, but that's how it worked. It was really just a way of fleshing out the toy line. Retroactively, the blue Megatron reissue became Megaplex under the same body double concept. The blue one originally being a multi-pack exclusive in Japan, but reissued became a completely new character. The idea behind Megaplex was, it is Megatron with all of with the same intelligence, power, and cunning, but with his power, but with all that intentionally capped. Like program, whereas program is limited, and he's not able to like fully process all of his abilities. That way, Megatron could always keep him under thumb. Usually, he would be sent out into battle when Megatron needed some kind of diversion, or when he himself was unable to be at the front line of a battle, usually following Megatron's instructions point to point. This is a character, of course, being Machine Wars, extremely little fiction actually belongs to Megaplex. Bacon fleshed it out for their Machine Wars year, however, with a completely repainted Dreadwing from Prime. Obviously, the head looks nothing like Megatron. They didn't retool it. So, they came up with their own idea of a version of Megaplex who was breaking free of what Megatron wanted him to do. All the power, all the control, but uh, programmed to operate independently and differently. But this one had that Megatron programming burned into him, and eventually succumbed to this inner Megatron who demanded he uh, take up the name and the mantle, and lead the Decepticons to global and galaxy-wide conquest. Typical Megatron stuff. But that's how they kind of fleshed the character out and kind of made him his own thing. So, I don't see any reason why we would not be able to do the same. So, to come up with a concept for a Nemesis Megatron, I'm taking this pre-existing clone, because that's what Nemesis usually is. He's usually a clone of Optimus Prime, so here is our clone of Megatron. So, let's imagine a Megatron where he needs to create a body double because, well, you've got Starscream and Shockwave and literally any Decepticon with enough power to overthrow you, wanting to overthrow you, and all the others that are not powerful enough to overthrow you are entirely incompetent, losing to the Autobots all the time. So, what is a tyrant to do? I need minions I can trust who are actually capable in battle. So, I'm going to go with the only one here I can trust. Me! Thus becomes Megaplex, a creature of the same power and cunning of Megatron, but programmed with none of the ambition. So at no point is he going to want to turn his powers against Megatron. In this concept, we are intentionally writing in a flaw to this ideal. That without that ambition for power, that power-hungry drive Megatron has, that also means that need for conquest does not exist either. And as you start peeling away those desires, you're left with a Megatron who is blindly following orders, but without a cap like the original Megaplex had. You get a Megatron who's going to start to wonder, why am I doing this? And what do I exist for? And that's kind of the crux of creating a more complex character, not only for Megaplex, but also inherently for Megatron. So what happens to a Megatron who has their thirst for power dissolved away and now is left to their own devices? What you have is a Megatron who no longer has his motivation toward his villainy, where he doesn't quest for power the way that the current Megatron does, but he still has that need to overcome what he considers adversaries, or what he considers the tyranny that kept their side down. But without that need for power, you're dealing with a Megatron who would prefer to do that more peacefully and more amicably, and one who likely would not agree with Megatron's methods. Thus, you create this weird take on Megatron where he has the cunning, he has the power, and he has that original drive that turned him toward villainy, but without the parts that corrupted him in the first place. Thus, you have a Megatron who sides with the Autobots, similar to how a Nemesis Prime is always going to be labeled as a Decepticon because he is inherently evil. But in this case, the idea of cloning character is not something the Autobots would ever do. So if the concept is going to move from the Autobot side to the Decepticon side, it's got to be created by the Decepticons. It's their playbook. If we're doing this as a full fiction, it's even the same kind of tech and the same strategy that would create a Nemesis Prime in fiction. And isn't that think of that as just like an interesting image, Think of like a battle between Optimus Prime and Megaplex versus Megatron and Nemesis Prime. Is that a cool visual? Is that an interesting visual in your head? So, for the sake of visual representation, here is what I consider my Autobot Megaplex. We've taken a lot of the colors that the character is known for. That's like that really dull blue-green color as his secondary color. And for the primary color, I've replaced that gray that's associated with Megatron with brighter white, which is more akin to his shattered glass colors, which would be the only other example of a good Megatron, but that's shattered glass. It's too easy. We can't go with that. So we've reduced that gray to a tertiary color, made the primary color white, and those bright hits of blue that exist on Scourge and Nemesis Prime now exist on Megaplex to kind of tie him in together. And I do think it is a really nice color scheme to go with for what is supposedly a heroic Megatron. I have no reason for using the Cyberverse design for my visual example, other than that was the free coloring page that Hasbro gave out, so this is the one I went with. But this is how I would use Megaplex, a creation of Megatron, for the same reasons as the traditional Megaplex, but slightly altered to give Megaplex a reason to change his mind and to have a desire of his own. Not to battle, not to fight for Megatron's cause, but to actually do what Megatron originally set out to do. Seek peace, but instead of doing it through power, he is going to do it through, basically what the Autobots do. Taking out the one that is causing the strife in the first place. So that is my take on what a Nemesis Megatron would be. I think we have it. It is just up to a writer to actually realize it and take advantage of it. And I think it would be a really cool idea with some really unique opportunities. Because what does that say about Megatron when he can be this tyrannical villain, this world-conquering enemy, but you take away his thirst for power and it changes him that radically? What does that say about the Megatron in that series? Like I said, it's a little twist that adds just a little bit more depth to a traditional villain. So that is my concept. Let me know in the comments below what you think. And more importantly, let me know in the comments below what other underutilized Transformer characters there are. And maybe we can go into depth about a few more of them that catch my eye. So let me know. Looking forward to reading it. And I will see you next time. Guys, I am facing the most powerful enemy any YouTuber can face, the algorithm, and I need your help to defeat him. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment. Every time you do, we attack that algorithm and we drive it back until it can no longer defeat this channel. Thank you very much.